Good morning, and welcome to the International Mastermind Think and Grow Rich show. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist, and I'm back. I'm glad to be back with you. I'm glad to be sharing this very important philosophy, this very important principle with you today as we continue to walk through the book Think and Grow Rich. And persistence is going to be our topic today. It is the eighth step to riches, and it's actually the engine behind inducing faith that's necessary for you to achieve your goals. This is going to be an amazing show. Not only do we have an amazing guest to bring to you today, someone who's got some deep experience with leveraging this, not only in her personal life, but in her work life. I also get to hang out with my good friend and personal accountability partner. He's also my executive coach, Dr. Peter A. James. Dr. Peter, come on in, man. How you doing today?
I am so excited there, Galen. Another Saturday. We are driving once again. What is this all about? Anne McNeil gallivanting continues to gallivant all around the world, in Africa, in South Africa, all over. It's just you and me with the keys to the car, Galen. What do you say we take it for a nice, persistent ride today?
Absolutely. Hey, man, before we get into this, I want to read something from the text and get you to react to this before we start talking about and talking to our guests. It says that the starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desires bring weak results, just as a small amount of fire makes small amount of heat. If you find yourself lacking in persistence, this weakness may be remedied by building a stronger fire under your desires. Before we jump into this conversation, man, I would just love to get your reaction to this idea that desire is the cornerstone of all this stuff. And if you find yourself struggling with persistence, then it may be because you don't have a strong enough desire. There's not enough fire underneath your desire. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, so let's start out right there. A small amount of fire makes a small amount of heat, right? So now we're in this persistence thing, and you're finding yourself that you're lacking. If you're watching here, you're finding yourself that you're lacking persistence. You know that you have to do some things, but it's waning. You're not getting up early all the time. You say you're going to go to the gym. You say you're going to go for a walk. You say you're going to partner with someone on a regular basis, but after two or three times, it just kind of fizzles out. You're too tired, right? Go back to that chapter, or excuse me, that paragraph, that sentence. A small amount of fire makes a small amount of heat. So what does your desire look like? How strong a fire is your desire? How much stronger does it need to be? Maybe your desire is for the wrong thing. Maybe you need to kind of double down on that, to reflect on that, to be challenged on that. So that's why I actually have that highlighted in my text as well, Galen. I'm glad you read it, but it's very much resonates for this chapter and what we're going to be talking about today for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Can't wait to get into this conversation. I want to talk a little bit about our guest before we bring her in. We're going to be talking with CHERRISE WILKS, and CHERRISE is an experienced administrator with over 14 years in state, local government, and nonprofits. Currently, she is a community development expert, reservist with FEMA, and is owner and president of Affinity Consulting Group. Her expertise includes securing funding for federal, state, and private grants, managing local government budgets, and identifying local government operational cost savings and avoidance through the process of redesign. She's a certified contract manager and grants professional. So basically, she knows how to find the money, and she knows how to keep the money, and she knows where the money goes when it tries to leave. Perfect person to talk about persistence, I'm sure. CHERRISE, welcome to the show. Would love to bring you in. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Good morning. Happy to be here. Thank you
Oh
for
my
having me.
gosh, this is going to be an incredible conversation. Talk a little bit about your background and who you are. I shared
Mhm.
just a little bit with our audience, but uh, oh my God, I'm impressed just by the little bit that I shared. Talk a little bit about your background, though.
Yes. So I have had a long government career, both working at the state of Florida level, a couple of local governments in Florida, Jacksonville, Tampa, and then also having federal experience working with FEMA as well. Additionally to that, I did start a business initially as a side hustle, and then, God kept giving me more instructions to grow it bigger. So I have been also a business owner with a management consulting firm where we serve small businesses, providing business advisory services, and also provide management consulting to other governments throughout the U.S.
Wow. So basically, you don't have time for hobbies because you're constantly, or
I
do you?
do.
I mean,
I work a lot, so I have actually learned through this process in the past couple of years to get back to center and start taking time to spend time with family, to also spend time cultivating myself. So I did start hobbies again. I actually worked on picking up golf, learning how to play golf. I had started being invited to tons of golfing tournaments, and I didn't go because I thought you needed to know how to play. Biggest misconception I have heard. Now that I've been out on the golf course, I know that that is not the case. I want to play just because I enjoy it. However, I know that, I wasted years not getting on the golf course because I thought I needed to be like this exceptional player. So I'm learning to play golf. I do love reading. I like to be out in nature and exercise and go hiking and swimming and stuff like that. So yeah, I have a couple of hobbies now again.
oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you one of the biggest traits that you have to have, one of the biggest abilities you have to play golf, I've learned is the ability to tell lies and stories. So if you can tell lies and stories,
I'll
then
skip the
you
lies. I'm an honest person, but yeah, I'm pretty direct. But yeah, I'll definitely tell a couple stories though. I
well there
got you there.
oh there you go. And then the hobby of reading. I want to talk to you a little bit about this before we go to our
Mhm,
video. But I was asking you a little bit before we went live. What was your introduction to the book Think and Grow Rich? Because many people have a similar introduction. But what was your introduction to this being a book worth even picking up of the millions of books that are published every year?
mhm.
Why this book?
So the introduction for me actually started with I had three mentors pretty early on in my career at Jacksonville. And one of those mentors actually mentioned the book to me then. This was prior to me actually even thinking about starting the company, but just I was on a path at that time to actually become a city manager. They were grooming me to actually run departments within the city. And so one of my mentors actually introduced me to it, said that it would change my mind about how I operate and moving forward as you start climbing a ladder, want more success. It's important to, basically fortify your mind and get around people who are going to support you and help you grow.
Wow. Well, that's exactly what we talk about here. That's exactly what this book is about. And
Yes.
so, Dr. Peter, would love for you to kind of set up this video so that we can get into the rest of this conversation.
Yeah, I'm loving everything that we're talking about so far, even as Cherise has even gone a little bit into her journey. I will say this, Cherise, though, if you're following me on the golf course, I'll step aside and let you go ahead and play through. So, because I might be there for a little while for sure. So, but even, golf's a great analogy for this chapter that we're diving on into this week there, Galen and Cherise, is persistence. And as you're trying to dive on into this game of golf, it's not just you get out there one time and you're now all of a sudden a golf pro. Those of us have been out there on the links know it is a matter of going on the driving range ever so often, getting out there on the fairway and practicing and sharpening your skill and getting better at it. And it is not an overnight thing. As a matter of fact, even for business and our careers, There is no such thing as an overnight success. And this is why I love this text, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you have not ever received a copy of this or purchased a copy of this, today is your day to be able to do that. But this book really dives into 13 principles, 13 chapters of a guidance on how we can think and grow rich, not just rich from a wealth and financial perspective, but also richness of life in general. So as you listen to this video, please ask yourself, what does it need to look like for me to embody some of these principles day in and day out? And again, it's not an overnight success thing. It is definitely a lesson in persistence.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
Good stuff. Loving that video. Really gives us a synopsis of this entire text. And again, those of you who have never had the chance to even peruse through the pages of Think and Grow Rich, this is a classic. This is a book that really guides us in our careers, guides us in our business. One of the books. And I definitely want to dive on into this persistence chapter with you, CHERRISE, if that's all right. So here's my first question for you there, CHERRISE. You've kind of given us, laid the foundation for your background, even there's a lot of things you've gotten into and are continue to get into. I heard the government lens in there for sure, and the government experience. Working with the government in and of itself is a lesson in a practice in persistence by itself. And how have you been able to leverage your experience, utilize your experience in order to benefit your own career? Could you give us maybe some examples of what that might look like or what that has looked like historically?
Yeah, so starting out with my career, I actually went to graduate school for a master's in public administration. So that was a deeper dive into working for the government and how the inner workings actually work. I started my early career, my first job out of undergrad was working for the state of Florida. And I found myself in two positions within a 2-year period. And what was happening during that time in the state of Florida, there were like a lot of issues going on with children, and Department of Children and Families had a lot of cases that were popular in the news. A lot of things were happening, and I found policies being basically sent down to the staff telling us to do certain things. And logically, for me, it didn't make sense. So I actually asked my supervisor at the time, I said, I want to understand how these policies are made. And if you don't mind, I want to actually contact the House of Representatives. I found that they have an internship program. I know I'm out of school, I'm about to start grad school, but I actually want to, take an internship there. So that's what really catapulted my career and going down the path of focusing on public administration at that time. So I went to Capitol Hill in Tallahassee, and I actually interned on my day off on a Friday because I did 410s and figured out how policies were being made in Florida. And from there, I vowed to basically be a person who was going to effectuate change. And if I had a hand in it, I was either going to help create policy, direct resources to people that really, really need it, or basically figure out ways to respectfully get around the system. So essentially, I did that and then went into the local government sector in terms of being able to work in around policy. And I ended up working for 3 mayors, which gave me even higher access to understanding how policies are impacting everyday people within government. And I specifically also asked them, I would always make a request. When I didn't know something, I went and I asked, can I do this? Or can you introduce me to someone who can help me achieve that thing that I wanted to learn? So I actually asked to learn about finance. I understood policy in about 2007, but finance was an area that I was lacking in. And I also saw in my city where all the resources were going. They were always going to wealthier areas. They weren't going to underserved communities. I needed to understand why, who were the people making these decisions and why they made those decisions, and then figure out a way to go and actually make a case for why they needed to invest in areas that were consistently overlooked and underserved. So in finance, I learned everything from economic development, how public works projects happen, police and fire. Those are usually the largest budgets in city governments. And I learned how to actually, like, how companies were coming to the city and pitching their ideas and getting stuff done. And so I vowed from that moment that I definitely wanted to teach other people how to basically build the relationships with the government and make stuff happen in their communities. And I think that's where God put it in me with a series of 3 dreams. When I was in grad school and working, I had 3 dreams to actually create a company, writing grants, helping the community. And basically that I started doing that in the evenings after work and on weekends. And I started working with small businesses and nonprofits in the community who I knew could actually impact change, even if I couldn't do it in my government position. And so that's what started my business from there. And I've been doing it ever since. And now I go back and actually procure government contracts myself and teach others how to do it too.
Wow. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm sure we don't even have nearly the amount of time to identify all the layers that you had to pull back in those local and state governments in order to effectuate change. Before we even go over to Galen, I want to go back to that vow that you made to yourself, that I wrote down, that vow that you desired to effectuate change. And that really ties in closely to this persistence chapter and that desire. If you could talk a little bit about that what was welling up inside of you in order to make a difference. Can you give us a little bit of insight?
Yeah, I basically just call it divine intervention.
Okay.
It's God, at that time, slowly revealing my purpose, also helping me understand and watching everybody else. That was one of the things. I am not a person where I am always going out and leading things. I am a leader, but I normally like to sit back, watch, and observe. Those skill sets will allow you to see what is actually on the playing field, as they say, so that you can strategically figure out how to move and who to talk to and how to navigate landmines that you might come across, and also make a difference. So oftentimes I would maybe be quiet in a room. I had a seat at a table because of who I was working for, but I would listen more than I would speak. But that was because in the back of my mind, my brain is very strategic. I'm sitting there, making plans and figuring out a way to execute it, and also figuring out who I need to talk to help me execute the plans that I created, or even also sell those plans. So I made it, maybe someone in charge made them feel like it was their idea. So all of those are definitely, emotional intelligence skills that you have to use in order to basically successfully implement large scale plans or large multi-million-dollar projects.
Wow, Galen, this is some deep stuff here, man.
Well, I'll tell you, this is also, what she just shared is a masterclass in influence and leadership, because just the idea of listening more than you speak, incredibly important, and I'm sure a major element to your success. I'm curious. I want to go back to, you said that your one of your mentors suggested, hey, look, if you're going to do this business thing for real, one of the books you need to check out is this Think and Grow Rich book written in 1937. I'm curious about if you've ever had, when was your all-in moment? And by all-in moment, there is a point where we read the book and we say, that's interesting. There's a couple of good points, and I might want to make a note here. That's kind of cool. And then there's another point where you say, you know what, this is more than just a book. I need to really, really put this to the test and see if I can leverage this to achieve larger goals. What was your all-in moment for this text?
I think my all-in moment came from one day I was at work with my last city, and I just decided, I've got this business. I've had a few contracts on the side, but at that time, I actually I was working a lot, and I feel like my body was giving me signals that I needed to slow down and take care of myself. And so I kept just thinking about, how do I want to live? What am I most passionate about? How can I, continue to excel in my career? Is it the business? Is it government? Can I do both? And so that aha moment for me came with, again, thinking about those principles, and I decided to double down on my business. And so what I did is I made the plan, another plan. I call it the 5-year plan at that mark, because my business had been I had been in operation for 5 years. And I said, I want to go out full time with the business. And so I started making plans and passionately looking for other contract opportunities and how to partner with other business owners to bring in revenue to the business. And I said, I will leave. Lord, prayed about it. Let me be able to leave when I am able to replace my income. And that will be, I will turn in my notice. I'll give them about 2 months because I was an executive, but I want to be able to spend more time for myself and be healthy, and also spend time with my family. And so essentially that's what I did. And that moment came in October of 2016. I went on a trip to Dubai, actually, and had that moment. I was like, it's time. I feel positive that these, contracts that I've applied for, I just know when I get back home, they're going to come through. And lo and behold, they came through. And I went ahead and turned in my 2 months notice, actually, to my supervisor at that time, which was a CFO. Turned it in, made an exit plan, and by December of 2016, I was out full time on my own.
Wow. Wow. That is such a story. And again, talks about the faith principle, talks
Mhm.
about the persistence principle, and then organized planning. And Peter, before I send this back to you, I want to share something else from the text. It says, poverty is attracted to the one whose mind is favorable to it, as money or success is to him whose mind has been deliberately prepared to attract it. And then it says, poverty conscious will voluntarily seize the mind which is not occupied by money conscious or success. So I'd love for us to talk about what are some things that both of you, Cherise, Dr. Peter, what are some things that you do to make sure that your mind is attracting success consciousness, as opposed to letting your mind drift wherever it wants?
Yeah.
Because the text says that if you let your mind drift to wherever it wants, it's going to drift to failure consciousness or poverty consciousness. So what are some things that you do to stay focused on the goals that you're trying to accomplish, rather than the reasons why you can't accomplish?
I know for me, lately I have been focusing on what I call spiritual practices and becoming centered. I find myself, when I start veering off into a space of I might have doubts or be a little fearful about something, I've learned to give myself grace, because this is normal. And even though I have read all of the, all the great business books, and this one included, and I know what it says, like, I'm still a human. And at the end of the day, as successful as I've been, and even the things that God's revealed to me and where I'm going, there's still times where I may have some of those doubts, etc. So what I do is, for me, I find myself, I will take time off. I will get back to doing things that help me feel centered. That's praying. I meditate. I do a practice called grounding, which is where I'm outside in nature at the beach and feel the sand and the grass and my toes. I do all of those types of things. I make sure that I also call people who are my accountability partners. I used to be in mastermind groups, but now I at least have some faithful accountability partners. I call them to have a conversation when I have those moments where, I think, hey, I'm having some doubts. Help me get back on track. Luckily, everybody in my life, we are all on the same path. We read a lot of the same books. They're business owners, or they have a full-time job doing something, but they also own a business. So we just make sure that we hold each other accountable and give space to each other to vent, but then we give each other the hard truth. Like, you're not going to stay in this place, get your butt back in gear. There's people who need these services, this, information, get back out there and get on the horse and make it happen. And here's your deadline. I'm going to check in with you on a Friday, and I want you to turn these 3 things into me. So luckily, I have built that network of people in my people that I trust in my alliance, and all of these women and men hold me accountable.
Wow. Well, you're reminding me of another accountability partner that I get to talk to. So, Dr. Peter, what are some things that you do to keep your mind from drifting into the space of failure and lack, and keep it focused on success and the goals that you're wanting to accomplish? What suggestions do you offer, and what things do you lean on?
Yeah, I love the question there, Galen, because actually I was reflecting on it this past week. And here's how I was reflecting on it. I went to church on Wednesday night. Don't always go to church on Wednesday night, but I'm beginning to make it more of a habit overall. And coming out of church, I thought to myself, I felt very invigorated, very inspired, very focused on the message and even the prayer that was occurring that Wednesday evening. And it also made me think, the more I don't go to church, the easier it is to be impacted by the environment and everything that's going on around me. And so therefore, for me, it's important that I stay connected and with others, with the message, in order to stay in that right frame of mind, frame of faith to a certain extent. Very similarly, in this persistence chapter, Napoleon Hill says, poverty consciousness will voluntarily seize the mind, which is not occupied with money consciousness. That's just that example about poverty versus money, right? But very similarly, with this mindset, with this question that you're asking about there, Galen, it's important to, as CHERRISE had mentioned, surround yourself with like-minded individuals. It's important to have that mastermind. For me, this call right here, Galen, keeps me connected with Think and Grow Rich. This call, truth be told, also helps me to sharpen my presentation skills on Zoom. So you see, I am continuously finding ways to sharpen these skills, to stay connected, to strengthen my mindset so that it doesn't waver. Because in the absence of doing any of these things that I've described, church, this call, our mastermind groups, our accountability, it's easy for our minds to take the path of least resistance and really become susceptible to the what ifs of failure, the what ifs of poverty, the what ifs of the news, social media, all this other stuff that continues to pour into our minds. How am I intentionally injecting my mind with the right things on a regular basis? Here's another great example: the gym, your diet, right? Persistence from those perspectives. So this chapter speaks of volumes overall into going back to even what CHERRISE had mentioned, that her vow, her inspiration, that strong fire that we need to keep the momentum going. And my strong fire is burning hot because I got some serious goals, Galen, that I'm sure you know about very well.
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you, we're talking about so many great Think and Grow Rich principles just in this conversation. We're talking about the power of the mastermind. We're talking about faith. We're talking about desire. CHERRISE, I want to come back to you and just ask specifically about persistence. I know that there have been so many situations that I've been in where I had no idea what the answer was going to be. I had no idea as to how to work through this situation. I just kept showing up. I just kept showing up. It was nothing but persistence. And it's almost like the universe said, okay, well, if you're going to continue to show up, then I'm going to toss you a kernel of inspiration because you just keep showing up. Can you think of a situation where, and you talked a little bit about this already, but where you just continued to show up. You didn't have any answers, you didn't have any solutions, didn't even necessarily even know the right questions, but you just continued to show up. And because of that persistence, success started to find its way to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a particular instance of maybe a project that I was working on. I think for the most part, with a lot of the projects that I've been able to work on in specifically in government and even with my business, oftentimes what I find is that you have to have persistence, especially when the end goal is, for me, it's always about community. And so I am not thinking about myself in the types of projects that I take on. I actually have again, back to that passion and purpose. I want to create impact for communities, not, one individual, but too many. And so any of the projects that I take on in business or having worked in government, I am always looking at the bigger picture. And regardless, when you are working on, I call them all community development type projects, and reimagining a neighborhood or something like that, which can be inclusive of like adding in parks, bringing in business development activities, focusing on youth programs and making sure that the people in the community have the resources that they need to succeed. I know that it takes persistence to think about the long game with these projects because there's so many moving parts. And oftentimes that redevelopment of an area, unfortunately, it takes years to happen. So I have been involved in projects where, let's say I actually worked on a funding application for a project. It takes 6 to 12 months before you find out if you get money, especially with grants. So even before that, you have to plan for the grant to apply for it, unless you want to be like a lot of people where they do it last minute because it came out and it's due in 4 weeks. That is the absolute worst way to bring in money to your community. I have been more successful actually winning millions of dollars by planning first and even planning to apply for a grant 6 months before it even hits the streets. So I already have a project in mind that I am going to apply for this funding for, and then I go pursue it. But then you have a waiting period to find out if you even won. But I always have faith that we're going to win it and that we put together a great proposal and we wait. But then once you get the money, you still have all the project planning moving parts and the partners that you need to bring to the table. And it takes even longer to disperse that money out into the community. So most of the multi-million-dollar like grant projects that I've worked on, it's usually a 2 to 5 year project. And so you have to stay persistent in that. And then me being the person that I am, I'm a person of integrity. I also want to make sure that those grants are managed well and that people are not attached to the project who might be corrupt or get, the client or the city in trouble with auditors, so I make sure that that money is managed and that we spend all of the money and not leave a single penny to return back to the funder. So those are some of the things that I've done when it comes to being persistent with these projects, because I know what the end result is going to be for those community members. And so whether I'm working with an individual business owner or an individual nonprofit, I'm always looking at how many people are you trying to serve and how can I best help you get there? And looking at the bigger picture.
Galen, I got some. She struck some nerves with me a little bit when she just gave that response because
That's good.
It's in a positive way for sure, CHERRISE. So thank you so much for sure. Where you struck the nerve was the government contracts, the bids, and you're absolutely right. Although my industry, my focus is not necessarily on the funding aspect of it, but more on maybe some training, some coaching that needs to be done with the government entities and agencies overall. And unfortunately, I'm the responder to the posts that are out there.
Okay.
I know I need to switch that a little bit in order to be more proactive, develop more relationships. But really what's even resonated with me, and I know this already about the government, that it is the time, the gap, the space that you've described, which can sometimes a few months, a few weeks to a few months to a 6 months to a year before this actually takes place. So
Yes.
during that time, this is going to benefit someone who's listening for sure. During that time, what are you busy doing? What are you busy doing that allows you to not have to be so anxious about the what ifs? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, fine. During that time with waiting to see, hey, are we going to be successful? I actually work on building more alliances and partnerships during that time, especially if it's maybe one or two projects that I'm like laser focused on. So I am constantly working on how can I bring in more partners and alliance members to help, again, achieve that overarching goal. I don't just kind of sit and wait, if that makes sense. I'm looking at, hey, maybe it's a $5 million grant we went after, but you know what? There's another 200,000 over here that we can get to do a piece of this, like maybe put in, I don't know if it's a park for kids. I need to go partner with an agency like a Kaboom or something and have them come in and build some smaller play sets for, with churches and nonprofits around the same neighborhood or in the same neighborhood. So I'm looking at those opportunities to still kind of make a larger impact, but it's through partnerships and alliance members. So I spend a lot of time actually continuing to network in the interim and then see how I can bring people into projects or things that I'm working on or be of service to them on something that they're doing. So I think that is what makes me successful is I'm a connector.
Yeah.
I have a good network and I want to add value to the people who are assisting me as well. And I keep that principle in mind.
Love to hear that. And that, again, that's going to resonate, definitely resonates with me. It's going to resonate with someone who's listening, because oftentimes it's easy for us to just get caught in that conundrum of, okay, I put it out there. It's like when you put an application out there or resume, you're waiting for that job and then you're thinking about it all day, every day. It's an act in futility to a certain extent, that instead of doing other things, to building other relationships, connecting other people. I truly appreciate you hearing this, Galen. This is a great conversation. Before I come back to you, I want to make sure that we acknowledge all the individuals who are listening in on YouTube. I see Colette. Thank you so much, Colette. Johnny Lloyd, as always. Shannon, hope you're doing well this morning. Gloria, Doretha, Diane, Miss Smitty, good to see you this morning. Imelda, Patrick says, great conversation, CHERRISE. And then Wyman says something very insightful there, Galen. Wyman's good about dropping some pearls on us there for sure. Wyman says, we must be intentional about who we give access to, your ear gate as well as your eye gate, which are the entry points to our subconscious minds and our souls, our mind, our will, and emotion. I touched on that a little while ago about how sometimes we're inundated with so much. CHERRISE, before we go back to Galen, sorry, Galen, I have to ask this one also. I'm also hearing that you are guarding what sinks into your mind, whether it's from friends or other avenues. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like for you?
Sure. So again, I didn't share, I am an empath. So as a part of being empathetic to people and listening a lot, I take on, people will come tell me things on these projects or when I'm out, and I have to, I had to learn some skills around that in order to protect myself. So part of that too, I think it's the introverted skill. I may be out networking and building alliances, but I'm not the person who probably works the entire room. Let's talk about networking. I don't work an entire room. Sometimes I'm actually really strategic. If there's a way to find out who's at a networking conference, I will peruse through the members ahead of time and find a couple of individual people. Usually my list is 5 to 7 people that I want to actually build a relationship with. And I go and I meet them at the conferences, things of that nature, and start really talking to them just one-on-one and try to find out personal things about them so that we can find commonality with each other. I cannot, and then after that, after I met a couple of people for the day, I'm probably going to go to my room or go out for a walk or something like that, as a small example. Other things that I do with my friends and accountability partners, we all have this thing we do where we send a text or we may call and we ask, I'm having a moment doing, I feel anxious or I feel angry about something. Are you in a space where you can listen to me? And we are honest with each other. If we're not, we say, no, I'm not, but I may be available, at 5, or I'm available tomorrow to talk to you. And it's okay if you find somebody else that you can talk to, but my headspace is not where I can take on what is also happening with you. And that's a way that we help protect each other and guard each other from, I call it verbal vomit, when you have some friends or colleagues that just call you on the phone and they just go in, and whatever is happening in their life, it's on you, and they don't even bother to ask how you're doing. So we make sure that we do that with each other and give each other that grace, which helps protect our minds as well. And then also, I go off of social media several times. It happens. Usually if I'm going through something, people notice if I'm not posting something, at least occasionally, they know to actually call my phone and check in. So my absence, I'm not on there all the time, but I do check in enough to make people, make sure that people know, hey, I'm alive and things are good over here. But I will definitely close my mind to the news. I'll close mine to social media. I will only listen. I really don't listen to the radio because I don't care for the music. I'm listening to like old school music or gospel. I protect myself at all costs. And I've also learned the power of saying no to things. When I'm not feeling it in my spirit, I say no, or I can't do that right now, but I will do it later.
Love it. Wow, Galen. Ooh.
so many things that you and I have talked about with our other accountability partner, which actually, CHERRISE, you would actually love our other accountability partner.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about Dr. Peter, about this annual meeting that we go to, because CHERRISE talks about the importance of having like-minded people around you who can help you see your vision more clearly, help you see yourself more clearly. And one of the places that we go each year is to this annual meeting where we can do just that. This year it's going to be I can't even see what it's going to be. Talk a little bit about that, Dr. Peter.
Absolutely. If you all of you see that on the screen, we're going to be definitely in Pompano Beach this year on January 5th and January 6th, as you see there on the screen. As Galen has mentioned, it's important, and even as CHERRISE has mentioned, it's important that we really are able to focus on who we surround ourselves with, who we are pouring into, who's pouring into us. And then what I love about this accountability meeting is how we're getting ready to start our year off, number one, but then also reflecting on our journey from where we've come. This is held every year, and this is not just the one and done type of thing, for sure. As Galen has even mentioned, we're part of a mastermind. We have accountability groups in order to keep us sharp, to keep us on task, to make sure that we don't get waver and lackadaisical, because it's easy to fall into that business as usual mindset. But I don't know about you, but I don't want to be business as usual. I really want to elevate. I want to get to that next level, whatever that next level will look like for you. That's what this accountability meeting is all about. So if you've never been to this, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to check out this link and even this information that you see here on the screen. Come to Pompano Beach on these days in January. I've already detailed it on my calendar. Galen, I'm sure you have as well.
It's already on my calendar, and I'll tell you why that's important, because a big part of that the process of preparing for that annual meeting is that Anne McNeil requires that you put your life in writing. She requires that you write down what's happened over the past year, what goals did you set for yourself, what goals did you achieve. And I like the way that she talks about it as it's almost like going to a tribunal, where you've got to demonstrate, what did you do with the 364 days that you had been given? What did you do with that time? And if you didn't do the things that you said you were going to do, then why should the tribunal give you another 365 days to waste against these things that you're saying you're wanting to do in the upcoming year? So that pre-work, really, really important. But I tell you, that pre-work really does help. For me anyway, it helps me set my focus on, what do I want to do with the next 365 days? And what were the accomplishments? What were the things that helped me to achieve the goals that I've achieved, and what were the misses, and why did I miss those things that that maybe I didn't accomplish that I wanted to. So definitely worth the nominal investment. It's definitely worth the time. And quite honestly, if you're not doing this, even if you're not doing it with us, but if you're not doing this and you're just kind of drifting and hoping that your life will turn out okay, I'm going to say that you're wasting your time, because nothing goes, no plan goes according to plan. And if you're not intentional, back to what Wyman was saying about being intentional about those things that you want to put in your life, luck is not going to get it. Luck is not going to get it. So, oh my gosh, what an amazing conversation. And I can't believe where the time is gone. We're getting so close to the end. But before we do, I want to go around and just understand what are some key ahas that you've gotten from this conversation? And then what are some key things that you want to share with the audience so that they can stay in contact with you, or be aware of something that you might be focused on? And Dr. Peter, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to CHERRISE.
And thank you so much there, Galen. I'm going to toss a question over to CHERRISE. The chat has been booming. YouTube has been booming with questions and insight. They're loving the conversation. Someone has asked us already about how do I get into masterminds. Another individual is saying great conversation, as I mentioned earlier. Patrick, however, has asked CHERRISE, as you reflect on Think and Grow Rich as a whole, what principle, I know we're in the persistent principle this month, but anything that resonates the most that has helped you to overcome or get to your next level, what initially comes to mind for you as you reflect on that about Think and Grow Rich?
I'm actually going to stick with the concept of persistence, but talk about one of the steps that it mentions. And that is basically planning with continuous action. So basically with my career, with my business, also like what I teach clients as well, is that you need a plan. The tagline for my company is plan it, fund it, and manage it. And I always start out with telling people that in order to be successful, even if you're trying to acquire money, which is, the goal for what we do, you still need a plan. I found myself actually, especially during the pandemic, I had some deaths in the family due to that, and things got off kilter. I used to actually hold an annual vision party. We would, I'd invite friends over to my house. We would sit there and create our vision boards or a vision book, and come up with the themes for our life for the year. And the pandemic threw all of that off. I found myself even during that time, not only dealing with personal issues and the deaths that were happening, I felt my life was out of sync because I wasn't in a planning mode to think about, the next quarter or how to get through month 6 or anything like that. This year, I actually finally, it took a little bit longer than normal, but I got back to focusing on a plan. And what I've done, even though I will set a 12-month kind of overall plan, I did that a little less intense this year. And I decided to adopt the mindset of, there's a book called The 12-Week Year, which is a business book. And so that is getting people to focus on planning for a quarter. And honestly, that has freed me to just think about, hey, I can have an overall plan, which is high level, but let me get into the weeds and plan 3 months at a time and still meet the goals that I set for the year, but I'm not focused on the end result immediately all the time. I'm just going to say, hey, maybe let's say it's, I don't know, earn 250,000 in revenue. Well, maybe one of those ways that I'm going to do that is I'm going to do, 10 trainings for the year. Well, maybe I'm only going to have 3 in the first quarter. And so I focus on those 3 and getting those executed well. And that's what I focus on. I don't think about whether we meet that goal yet. I just try to make sure that it's executed well. It reflects the brand. It reflects me as a person, and that the people that I'm serving get their transformation. And so I've learned to not let the weight of the world and the weight of even my own goals and things weigh me down, but I take it day by day. I focus on it 3 months at a time. I do what I can do to the best of my ability. And if not, I call in reinforcements. Or if I fail at something now, I give myself grace, because in business, you're going to fail at something. And I used to be an extreme perfectionist who always wanted to be successful at everything. And I've learned to actually embrace failure.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Thank you so much there, CHERRISE. Galen, lots of stuff that we talk about on a regular basis that are rising to the surface. Even that last one about perfectionism, which can slow us down way more
yes.
than we ever think. So thank you so much for sharing what that looks like for you, CHERRISE, because again, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to benefit someone who is listening, and they're going to want to dive on into it from your perspective, from your lens as well. Patrick says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Looking forward to the annual
Absolutely.
conference. Good stuff. Galen, lots of stuff resonated for me today. I got a ton of notes over here, but I think you even kicked it off great for me with that strong desire type of conversation. CHERRISE continued it with her vow, that pivotal moment. And sometimes we have to have that turning point, that rounding the corner point to be able to look back to say, hey, you know what? No more how it's been done. Let's move forward in this vein and continue to move in our trajectory from that perspective as well. So that was huge for me overall. Thank you so much there, CHERRISE. Hey folks, my name is Dr. Peter A. James. You can find me at shiftyourmindset.com or any social media platform at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAJames. Very excited to help you and partner with you as you're looking to shift your mindset and take your business and career to the next level. Wow, Galen, I don't even know. I'm like exhausted, I think, a little bit, but I'm gonna pass it over to you.
My head is reeling for sure. My head is reeling for sure. CHERRISE, what are some key ahas that you've taken from this conversation? What would you like to leave the audience with? And how can people get a hold of you if they want to not only get in touch with you and benefit from your expertise, but I understand you got a book coming out, you got a lot of goodies to share. What would you like to leave for our audience?
I would say for the audience, if there's anything that you have been thinking about doing, sit down during this last few months of the year and actually put a plan in place and think about how you're going to accomplish it. Take time out on the weekends, an hour per day, the month of December, however that resonates with you. Just make sure that you sit down and actually put the pen to the paper and write out what your visions are, your goals, how you're going to achieve it, who can actually help you achieve it, and Power of a Mastermind, if you need to join one of those, start seeking that out to find out how you join. But you definitely, again, need to make a plan for whatever it is that you want to accomplish, even if it's as simple as, hey, I want to pay off credit card for the year and be debt free or something. You still have to make a plan in order to do that. So I certainly encourage everyone to make those plans. And that also kind of bleeds over into like the things that I do with helping businesses and governments actually acquire money. We have to have plans in place. And so one of the things that we are launching, we've got a free guide for 5 types of funding for your startup business. They will drop the bit.ly link into the chat so that you can go to this great landing page and be able to download your guide for free. And then you will be on our email list as well and be able to find out when I am dropping the book, which will happen next month. And that book is actually 5 proven steps to find business funding. And so we're going to walk you through the steps that you need to actually plan to acquire business funding. And we teach you about 22 types of business funding. Most people don't know that there are 22 different types of funding out there for your business. And they're honestly only thinking about grants or loans. And so we have cataloged those, and we're going to teach you the steps that you need to take in order to get there. So if you want to connect with me, obviously, if you are watching, I've got a QR code on my screen saver. That is my direct business card. Additionally, you can go to www.acgfl.com and see more about the Business Affinity Consulting Group, NEFL. And you can find me on social media. I'm usually on LinkedIn these days, so just put in CHERRISE WILKS. and you will come in contact with me there, or you can put in Affinity Consulting Group, NEFL, on LinkedIn, and you'll come up to the business page.
Oh my. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. We've talked about so many different principles just in this space of persistence. Again, I just the key thing that I got from this is the importance of doing the work, the importance of constantly doing the work and guarding yourself. Research shows that we have 67,000 thoughts per day, and 60 to 70% of those thoughts are negative and self-critical. You've got the world trying to get you to feel in a space of lack and need so that they can sell you stuff. So if you are not mindful, if you are just floating through life, you are at the mercy of everyone else who's trying to get you to do what they want you to do. So you have to protect yourself. You have to guard your mind. And CHERRISE, you've been an incredible example of demonstrating those principles. My name is Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. There are so many ways you can get a hold of me throughout all of social media. Everyone knows about my podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We talk to leaders literally all over the world about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they think it really takes to be an effective leader. Definitely worth checking out. But I want to share with you about a project that Dr. Peter and I are working on together. It's called Power Moments. Power Moments is a coaching consultancy that's focused on affinity organization, Black and Brown affinity organizations. Research shows that 20 to 30% of all executives, all senior executives, either have or have had executive coaches. I've coached over 1,000 executives, and only 4 of my executives have been African American. So although I am coaching corporations, those corporations get to choose who get coaches, and those who become senior executives, they have this coaching in common. So if you belong to an affinity organization that's focused on Black and Brown executives, have them give us a call, have them reach out to us, because we want to pull together a program for you. We've got a cadre of executive coaches with a variety of expertise, and we want to give you the benefit of experiencing what other senior executives have already learned, that you can't do this by yourself. You need to have a professional to help you ferret through your goals and help you ferret through your challenges. This has been another amazing show. Oh my gosh. Join us every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time, where we walk through a principle of this incredible book written in 1937 by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich. I want to leave you with this. These are the words of Dale Carnegie. And Dale Carnegie says, most of the important things in the world have been accomplished by people who kept on trying when there seemed to be no hope at all. And in my mind, that's a definition of persistence. The only thing that I know for sure is that no plan will go according to plan, and you have to be persistent in order to realize the destiny that is out there waiting for you. So until next time, take care and think and grow rich.
Bye, everybody.